we Indians do things on a massive scale, something on the lines of the Mahabharata. This is like the Mahabharata because of the massive scale. The story of 1984 has got thousands of characters. Everyone is tied to a seat of power. They know righteousness and they try to act accordingly. But all of them have their beliefs and they are compromised by power. The vilest atrocities are committed, and yet they will simply deny it. They live in denial. Internally, they will justify the atrocity with the doctrine of necessity or in conformity with the beliefs. And they all see the disaster approaching, but they just glued to the seats and they are unable to do anything about it. And this story is brutal because now you find that arrogance is going to be punished and egos are going to get destroyed. Pride will cause fall and the mighty will fall with a thud. And in the end, there will be no winners. Everybody will lose. The story progresses and just a handful of people could compromise and stop the disaster from happening. That simply does not happen, and I'll explain to you why compromise was impossible, if not difficult. This is the story of 1984 Sikh riots, Swami Vardhanand signing in. Historical memory acts in strange ways. The Sikh had a huge empire. They lost it to the invading British. At its height, the Sikh empire stretched from Kashmir to Kabul. The Sikh fought 3 wars to protect their identity and empire and lost all of them. During the British rule, the British advocated fragmented democracy, and the Sikh found it necessary to have a political party, and they formed the political party known as Shrimani Akali Dal in 1930, and this had a significant impact in the independence movement also. The leaders of Shrimani Akali Dal have played a vital part in getting the British out of India. During that time, 1930s, actually in the undivided Punjab, Muslims were in a majority, and Shrimani Akali Dal had to kowtow to the Muslim League to get fragmentary power. The scene did not change after independence. Punjab was divided between Pakistan and India, and even then the Akalis found that the Sikhs were still in a minority. There had to be yet another partition. So there were 2 partitions of Punjab, one between Pakistan and India, and a second partition between Haryana and Punjab. After the second partition, the Sikhs was finally in a majority, but the political power was still elusive to the Shrimani Akali Dal. The Indian National Congress ruled India from 1947 to 1977 like a colossus. But there was a small period in 1967 where the Indian National Congress lost a couple of states, and one of these states was Punjab. 1967, Shrimani Akali Dal come to power for the first time. There are internal squabbles, and this causes the administration to be weak. But nevertheless, between 1967 to 1971, Akalis are in power. In 1971, the Bangladesh war happens, and there is a wave of popularity for Srimati Indira Gandhi, the then Congress Prime Minister, and she calls for elections, and the Congress party wins in Punjab, and Shrimani Akali Dal are still now out of power. they start doing stupid things to get back into the seat of power. In the midst of political squabbling inside the Akali Dal, an accident happens. It's 1976, and an accident happened that changes the course of the history of Punjab and in a lot of ways India too. The story of 1984 Sikh riots starts off with an accident. Now here is the deal. It's 1977. The Damdami Taskal is run by a person called Kartar Singh Khalsa. Kartar Singh Khalsa is the run-of-the-mill Jathedar. He does everything that a Jathedar is supposed to do. Nothing beyond that. This person meets with an accident. A car accident in which he dies. And you won't realize it that time. But it changes the course of history. This is one car accident that changes the course of history in Punjab and in India. After the unfortunate accident, one of his close disciples called General Singh Barar, he makes swift moves and he claims that the Kartar Singh made him his heir, and with that claim he gets elected to the Jathedar post. In 1977, General Singh Barar becomes the Jathedar of Damdami Taksal. It is a big deal because he's just 31 years old and he's got a lot of energy and he is thoroughly and totally immersed in Sikhism. This is the unfortunate part, really speaking, because General Singh Barar is going to create waves and is going to have the whole of the 1984 riots can be traced to this particular time in history. This is strange but true. The voting members of the Taskal haven't made a wise choice because General Singh Barar has got a unidimensional personality. He spent all his formative years in Sikh religious schools, which wouldn't be a bad thing. But he's got this extreme inside him. He's got some extreme motivation that is pushing him on, and he is going to now force his Sikhism onto the masses, and he's in a position to do that. This choice is not wise, but the story moves on. This claim that the old Jathedar had appointed me the heir has actually been tried against later on, recently, and the claim was rejected. General Singh Barar's claim, after acceptance and becoming the Jathedar, he now takes up the cause, what he thinks Sikhism should look like, with total missionary zeal. The moment General Singh Barar becomes the Jathedar, he is now on a path and he is willing to take any sacrifice. He rearranges his family affairs such that he won't have to spend any more time for the family. He dedicates the rest of his life to Sikhism as he knows best and what he thinks is best. And he takes on a new persona, the persona of General Singh Bhindranwale. After his death, he is now known as Sant General Singh Bhindranwale. A very familiar name. The Sant Nirankaris were holding a convention. They hold these conventions annually, sometimes 2 to 3 conventions are held in a year. This convention was being held in
Amritsar, and they had taken permission from the authorities for this convention. The government then was an Akali Dal government. The permission was given. The Sikhs responded negatively. The date of the convention was a problem for them, and on the whole, the Nirankaris were considered blasphemers. On the morning of the date, Sant General Singh, he gave a fiery speech inside the premises of the Golden Temple, and from there a mob of about 200 people armed with swords and battle axes, some of them with guns, left for the convention area, which was nearby, on foot. There are two versions here. In one version, a person called Fauja Singh, Sant General Singh led the group. In the second version, only Fauja Singh led the group. I'm going to go with the first narrative, in which both of them are there. Now, Fauja Singh is a member of Akhand Kirtan Jatha. Akhand Kirtan Jatha by itself is an innocuous name, but they had a big hand in the terrorism that is going to follow. This group went straight to the convention, and there they began screaming and shouting. Gurbachan Singh, the head of the Sant Nirankaris, also came out, and they both of them had a huge argument. The Punjab police was there supposedly to provide security, but they were just mute spectators to the whole incident. In the middle of this argument, Fauja Singh drew his sword and tried to behead Gurbachan Singh, the head of the Nirankaris. The bodyguard shot him immediately. He died on spot. Then there was a fracas in which about 20 people were killed. The number of dead is not even clear till now. The breakup given is two of them were General Singh's men. 11 of them were Fauja Singh's men who were from the Akhand Kirtan Jatha, and 3 of them were Nirankaris. So all of them had their martyrs now. But somehow, in spite of being the center of the whole incident, it was Fauja Singh organization didn't get that publicity. That publicity went to Bindar Wali, who was more of a celebrity that time already. So in 1 year, Sant General Singh goes from being a Jathedar to one of the celebrities of Sikh revivalism. This cast a long shadow over what was going to follow. But in 1978, the Sikh community were in a state of trauma. The Nirankaris were a tiny fraction of the Sikhs, and I don't think they would have mattered at all. But somehow it went deep into the Sikh psyche.
We are going to have a look at the incident in 1978 from the lens of the Nirankaris. All religions are divided into sects. Some of these divisions are extremely violent. The Catholic Protestant division in Christianity resulted in centuries of war. Islam also has got its share. The division between Sunni and Shia has been on for 1,000 years, and there's still violence. It hasn't been resolved. Peaceful religions like Jainism and Buddhism have sects. They don't go to war because of that. Hinduism is basically divided into two sects, Vaishnavites, the Shivites, and then there are uncounted count in Hinduism. It is true that in all religions there is division, and so it is with Sikhs. Theology of the Sant Nirankaris might be pernicious for the Sikhs. It is not exceptional. In Islam, you have the Ahmadiyas, Ismails, the Bohras that have living leaders who are considered semi-divine. There are small cults in all parts of the world where somebody has claimed divinity. Hinduism is quite famous for that, but that doesn't mean that in other religions we don't have this. It is not an exceptional thing. That the Nirankaris, the living semi-god and a guru, being a sect of a religion is a common thing. They were holding this convention in Amritsar, which was a provocation, true. They were attacked by 200 people. The head of the Sant Nirankari was attacked. His bodyguards began shooting. At that time, the Akalis were in power. All the criminal and penal actions was taken against the Nirankaris. The Sikhs weren't touched. This was a very short-sighted view of the event from the Kali government, as the events that followed will show.
And money and recruits began pouring in. And this is a fertile ground now for creation of terror organizations.
The tears of the bereaved, the heat of the moment, these are hardly the things in which you take major decisions. This is exactly what happened in Punjab. This resulted in a destruction of Punjab economy. Punjab slid from being the richest state in India to the 15th richest state. Terror in Punjab can be traced to 13th April 1978. This is the date of the Sikh Nirankari clash. There are several versions of this incident, some of them incredible. The terror organization that formed after this incident initially started with the murder and terrorizing of the Sant Nirankaris. Later on, the resistance against the terror started. This resulted in widespread conflagration. Terror spread all over Punjab because of the opposition to the terror. The fact is, this movement against the Nirankaris is still going on. There was an incident a couple of years back. I was surprised to see UNHCR being involved on the Sikh side of this dispute. It is despicable on the United Nations to do this thing.
Creation of terror organizations. And there were small terror organizations before, but this was the time for launch of a big one. And this was Babbar Khalsa International. The moving force behind Babbar Khalsa International was Fauji Singh's wife, widow, Bibi Amarjit Kaur, and two Jathedars of the Akhand Kirtani Jatha. They were Talvinder Singh Pamar and Sukhdev Singh Babbar. Talvinder Singh Pamar was the president and Sukhdev Singh Babbar was a co-leader. And the aim of all these organizations was total independence of Punjab. They named the proposed country Khalistan, and there were others followed suit. Some of them had only a couple of members.
The formation of Babbar Khalsa group resulted in sporadic murders and violence. This was now an active terror group inside Punjab, and the then state government of Akalis were okay with that. The next escalation occurred with the assassination of Gurbachan Singh in Delhi, head of the Sant Nirankari sect in 1980. Sant General Singh and his main followers were the accused. The now Congress government went after them vigorously. Sant General Singh hid in the Golden Temple. Sikh outcry resulted in the cases being dropped. The assassination of Gurbachan Singh, the head of Nirankari sect, is it's like a spy novel. I was attending a community gathering in New Delhi, and across the street of his palatial home, sharpshooters were waiting for him. They waited till 11 o'clock in the night. The guru, the Sant Guru of Nirankari sect, was in his S model Mercedes car driven by a chauffeur. And as he got off, the shots were fired and they hit him and he died on the spot. Was being dropped. The fight against terror was taken up earnestly by the Punjab police. Extrajudicial killings were being carried out. In this new fight, a figure emerged. This was the late Lala Jagat Narayan, the founder editor of Punjab Kesari. He carried out a sustained newspaper campaign against terror. He was murdered in 1981. The method used to get to Lala Jagat Narayan is interesting, and we will come back to it later. This time, the Sant was arrested. Promptly, the Sikhs demonstrated all over India and got him released. Yet again, this gave the Sant a sense of impunity. After this, the Sant moved to the Golden Temple,
but this time for good. The then president of Akali Dal, Harchand Singh Longowal, claimed to have given permission or even suggested it. Longowal paid for this with his life. The terrorists got to him in 1985. While proclaiming his innocence regarding the two murders, the Sant simultaneously released a public statement approving the murders of Gurbachan Singh and Lala Jagat Narayan, and he pronounced that the killers be honored and awarded their weight in gold. Medieval stuff. The irony being, he also demanded Hindu-Sikh unity. The public outreach by the Sant stopped. He surrounded himself with gunmen. He was close now to the point of no return. The Akalis were feeling the heat. Their base was being eroded. They set up a political trap for the Sant. This was the Annanco Resolution. The Annanco Resolution was a dead end and the demands are unimplementable. Here are the quick bullet points of the Annanco Resolution. Denial of irrigation water to Haryana and Rajasthan from Punjab rivers. Cancellation of an existing water award to Haryana. Taking away Chandigarh from Haryana and giving it entirely to Punjab. Changing the existing borders of Haryana, Himachal Pradesh in Punjab's favour. Special autonomy for Punjab bordering on independence. Permanent price protection for Punjabi farmers and the fantastic demand of 10% reservation in the Indian Army for Sikhs forever. These demands had been gathering dust for 10 years. Topmost Akali leaders had formulated it and knew its implications. This was a political trap for the Sant. Once the agitation to implement Anandpur Dharma Yudh was launched, the politicians knew that they had got the Sant. Let's elaborate further. In 1961, Master Tara Singh was the president of Akali Dal. He demanded that Sikhs get their own state. The then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru rejected the demand on the ground that India being a secular country, a religious-based state could not be granted. Master Tara Singh went on a hunger strike inside the Golden Temple to press the demand. After a 40-day strike, Master Tara Singh backed off on vague assurances from the Prime Minister. For this, he was hauled over the coals and reviled for the rest of his life. So they knew this. Once inside the temple, the Sant committed to unworkable Anandpur demands would be in a similar impossible situation. He could not get out of Annanco Resolution without serious compromise. The compromise would destroy his image. The Dharma Yudh was tellingly started at the Akal Takht. The Akali leaders offered their ardas, a prayer with request. They resolved that they would continue the struggle until the Annanco Resolution was accepted and implemented by the central government. The simple-minded Sant fell for this and he led that agitation. The Sant side never actually properly analyzed the demands.
All solutions in life come with a newer set of problems. There are no panaceas in life. The Dharma Yudh started with demonstrations all over India, some violent. Activities like Kam Roko, strike, rail roko, blocking of railways, road stoppages, Nehar Roko, stopping of canal water were carried out. The Annanco Resolution entered into popular lexicon. Annanco Resolution, though not a panacea, was portrayed to be one. Terrorism now had a focus. They had something to justify their actions with. The then Prime Minister of India, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, is accused of autocratic behavior, intransigence, and a megalomaniacal policy based on elitist philosophies. A Charan Singh quote. Her party had won Punjab elections and were the ruling party, yet she was forced to negotiate with the losers. Several compromise formulas were worked out, all were rejected by the Sant or the Prime Minister. Both had their hands tied. Worse still, time was running out and fast. The terror that had started with the intermittent killings of Nirankaris escalated after Hindu opposition. Soon it became a free for all. The Punjab had now a full-fledged terror predicament that was out of control. Atrocities were committed on minority Hindus, random killings in markets, massacre in night buses happened. Killings became a daily affair. Some incidents were so terrible that even Babbar Khalsa condemned them. Terrorists were condemning terror. It was that bad. The Punjab police reacted with vigor. It was never enough. The cancer spread faster than the surgery. The Sant had shifted to Guru Nanak Niwas inside the Golden Temple. When Amrik Singh, associate and son of the late Jathedar Kartar Singh, was arrested in 1982, the Sant shifted to the Akal Takht itself in December 83. Yani Karpal Singh, the then Jathedar, head priest of Akal Takht, a very important Sikh religious post, issued a Hukumnama edict against this. It was ignored. The Golden Temple became now a center of Punjab terror. There were other Gurudwaras too. Army men like Major General Sahbeg Singh, retired Major General J.S. Bhullar, retired Brigadier Mohinder Singh, and other army men willingly collaborated with the Sant. They are honored for this today. The Sant, with the inadvertent help of terror organizations, was able to impose his will on the administration and judiciary. Orders would go from the Akal Takht, and on the pain of death, officers and judges would comply. It was a parallel government. Faced with an impossible situation, the centre imposed direct presidential rule after dismissing their own party government. It was far too late. Terrorism could not be controlled even with direct central intervention. The last negotiation with the Akalis was held by Captain Amarinder Singh, later Chief Minister of Punjab, and after this the Akalis went cold. The Sant run was going to end. It was only a matter of time now. The trap was sprung. By this time, the Sant had made too many enemies in high places. This realization dawned upon the Sant, leading to the now famous quote, "I am the bird that everyone wants to hunt." The final decision lay with the Prime Minister, Mrs. Indira Gandhi herself. She didn't want to enter the history books as the Prime Minister who ordered an armed assault on the Golden Temple. On the other hand, she could not allow Punjab to melt into terror and instability. For the Prime Minister, it was a classical mythological dilemma, a dharam sankat. I do not want to whitewash the narrative. There are tons of allegations against the Sant. It is alleged that he was forced from Guru Nanak Niwas on December 83 by the Babbar Khalsa. You don't want to mess with the Babbar. After moving in there were protests from Sikh holy persons. 4 of these holy persons were assassinated. Gyani Pratap Singh, an elderly 80-year-old ex-Jathedar of the Akal Takht was shot in his home in Tahli Chowk, as were Niranjan Singh, the Granthi of Gurdwara Sahib, Granthi General Singh of Walthoha, and Granthi Surat Singh of Majoli. Granthi is a senior Sikh priest. There are allegations of torture and murder inside the Akal Takht. 3 victims stand out because posters were put up by the Sant warning others to stay in line. Mutilated and dismembered bodies inside gunny sacks were found in the sewage and drains around the Golden Temple with alarming regularity. A truck carrying food was intercepted and found to be full of arms and ammunition. 1 truck of arms and ammunition, all illegal. This made the headlines and was common knowledge in those days. There is a list of powerful persons who were assassinated. There are editors, members of parliament, members of state assemblies, prominent Gurdwara committee members, rival sect leaders, senior police officers. The terror toll recorded is 1981 to 1983, 100 murders. Between January 84 to June 84, 298 murders. So you can see the escalation here. All this is going to dwarf what was going to come. Because of wholesale terror, there is no legally provable case against the Sant. He could have simply walked out and left his comrade in arms in the lurch. This is the way politicians will normally work. But the Sant preferred certain death to that. He wasn't a politician. He didn't want to become another Master Tara Singh. The Prime Minister had forewarned the Indian Army, and the Army had done their homework. And Army meticulously planned every move. There is a general staff for that. They even set up a mock Golden Temple to carry out exercises. The army, proud, brave and confident, was ready. This is the story of all armies before battle. In accordance with the Hindu traditions, Ambassador Daljit Singh Pannoon and others met with Bhindarwale on behalf of the Prime Minister. This was the last chance given to him. They talked of penalties. Did the Sant miss the significance of the event? We don't know. By the time the Sant had come to believe that the Darbara Sahib is actual real name of the Golden Temple, was politically impenetrable. Any attempt to clear would result in total revolution of the Sikh masses. Indeed, his saintly preachings were now replaced with harsher words. The Sant had stopped going outside, but all the believers started coming to him and to listen to his talks on various subjects. He wanted all Sikh villagers to buy a good revolver and a motorcycle and spare 3 youths for the fight. The Mauser pistol is became the iconic weapon for the terrorists. Everybody wanted one. So good pistol is equal to Mauser pistol. He also began preaching Sikh victimhood and anti-Hindu stuff, unfortunately, by this time. He wanted the Sikhs to rise up and liberate the Darbara Sahib in case the government committed the folly of entering it. The Prime Minister orders to the army were given around about March 1984. We don't know the date. 2 reasons are given to us. Number 1, the Sant was going to declare Khalistan. And number 2, Longowal had announced stoppage of food and tax payments in Punjab. All sources bear out one point. There was an air of incredulity that the army action against the Golden Temple would even take place. The sequence of events shows that even when the machine guns were firing, people was in a state of denial, like this is not happening, this is not real. The narrative breaks down at this point. There are too many contradictory claims and tall stories. The basic details are as follows. The first stage during March 1984, the Golden Temple is encircled by CRPF slowly and surely. Is done very gradually. They fortify themselves around the Golden Temple outside and dig in. The signal to the Sant is sent. On 1st June, we are entering into the actions now. On the 1st June, CRPF army commences firing from outside. The shooting starts around about 12 o'clock noon and continues till 8 p.m. There is about 8 hours of firing, all from outside. A curfew is imposed. The trains stop running in Amritsar station by 12 o'clock noon. Ominously, the exit gates are being locked up. There are 8 fatalities in this firing. So this is basically a warning fire. People got in the way. In the night, CRP is replaced by the Indian Army. CRP goes away. The Indian Army takes up all their posts. All the action is now controlled by the army. 2nd June, the army does nothing. They allow entry, but exit is controlled. Protesters are blocked. There is a Guru Parab next day. On June 3rd, there was a Guru Parab and some crowds collect. Akalis enter for political protest. It seems that the army is marking time. Those exiting in the night are arrested. This is the point to contemplate. The central government had enacted the Armed Forces Punjab and Chandigarh Special Powers Act on 6th October 1983. They gave near immunity to police and armed forces. The constitutional guarantees and liberties stopped applying in Chandigarh and Punjab for 14 years. The main advisor, General Sahabek Singh, to the Sant should have highlighted this. He knew the implications of the army gathering. The top Akali leaders, Tohra and Longowal, were inside the Golden Temple. They were eventually arrested, but they didn't take part in the action. They could have educated the terrorists about the implications, and they did, as the events show. Nobody stopped the civilians from entry, not the Sant side and not the army side. Thousands entered, some did not exit alive. Now everybody wanted glory. The common person in this did not matter. From here, there is a wide divergence in the narrative of the army and those against the army. Therefore, I will just continue with the bare facts accepted by both the sides. 3rd June, the entry to the Golden Temple is allowed, but exit is blocked. More than 1,000 enter. There are women and children, but they are mostly political workers. They get trapped inside. Most of them will not return. So even on the 3rd June, entry is not being stopped. 4th June, the real action now starts. About 4 a.m. in the early hours of the morning, the regular army attack on the temple started with a 25-pounder firing. This is a standard army warfare tactic going back thousands of years. The firing having started, Gurcharan Singh Tohra, Akali Dal, is sent to the Sant to offer a last chance to surrender. The Sant refuses. So at this point, the politicians are actually consulting with the Sant and telling him to surrender. The Sant refuses. Now it's the 5th now. On the 4th they have a frontal attack and they lose a lot of Jawans. So on the 5th, the army plan has failed. all that planning and all the thing had failed. This is the things that happened in actual battle. The army takes on huge loss. A few army Jamans are captured alive and they are tortured and murdered in cold blood. This is the reality of battle and it seeps into the army. Losses incurred are unacceptable. The original plan of infantry attack has failed. The army steps back and waits for further orders. Orders come in the night. 3 tanks and an armored carrier are sent in. At 7 p.m. on the 5th, the sun is seen for the last time on record. The searchlights of the tank and the armored carrier light up the Golden Temple. There is no hiding from them. The tank bombardments destroys all resistance, but the front of the Akal Takht is reduced to a rubble and a couple of buildings also are destroyed. There are main pockets of resistance. So these points like the Akal Takht and the buildings were pockets of resistance, and the army fired their tanks and armored carriers on them. So apparently the Sun side did not have those weapons to bring down tanks. Final tally according to the army, their own troops killed was 83. Their own troops wounded was 249. Civilian and terrorist killed was 493. This is the army figures. Terrorists and other injured 86. Civilian and terrorists apprehended 592. These is the official figure. Now from here you can see that about 330 army troops have been wounded or killed. Now wounded is with bullet wounds, so all these people are not going to be whole again. These figures are not disputed except for civilian and terrorist killed. This figure is anywhere given between 1,500 to 7,000 by the other narratives. But these figures are like more or less there. So you can see that it is not a small figure, even with the army saying these things. Now 7:30 a.m. on the 7th, the bodies of Santji, General Subek Singh and Bhai Amrik Singh are finally recovered. They are all hastily cremated. Most of these bodies are cremated. They are not given, and even the ashes are not given to their inheritors. And in this time, the Chief Minister Gyali Zail Singh visits the temple. 9th, last pockets of resistance are destroyed. So there were small pockets of resistance that were destroyed by the 9th. By 9th, everything is clear. But the crisis is not over. Now about 2,000 to 4,000 Sikh army cadets mutiny. The Sikh regiment of Ramgarh, now in Jharkhand, kill their commanding officer and take off for Amritsar. They are blocked in Kanpur. This incident hits the world news. There is a second mutiny in Mumbai that is immediately put down. National unity hangs by a thread. Eventually, Sikh officers and men in the army remained loyal. Casualty of 330 Indian army officers is a big event. The nation cannot accept that. The Indian army is the most diversified in the world. They've got every caste and creed and religion inside them and in important positions. They are looked up by nearly all Indian citizens. Usually a flag march is sufficient to quell riots. If army are firing with even live weapons, it's generally accepted that this was a necessary evil. Questioning army action inside the Golden Temple made this citizen take up a notice. This is not forgivable for Indians. The terror continued for another 7 years, dying a natural death in 1992. The terrorists used about 100 19 1890 designed 303 rifles with an assortment of other guns. 303 rifles is a prohibited bore and civilian ownership is not allowed. So, by their own claim, terrorists are using 100 303 rifles from inside the temple. So, all those things that there was no terrorism inside is proven wrong. It is absolutely wrong. The army action in Amritsar finally proves that the threat of terror from inside the Golden Temple was real and menacing. The presence of senior politicians inside the temple shows a level of collusion. I'm not saying these politicians were actually in favor of terror, but they were inside when all these things was happening. The Sikh masses live in denial and collectively decide not to celebrate Diwali. Now, this is an important point. When the Sikhs didn't celebrate Diwali in 1984, they sent that message, and probably they didn't understand that the message they were sending. This made all of them openly complicit to terror, unfortunately. A word about the Akhand Kirtani Jatha. Now, these Kirtani Jatha are a group of singers and musicians. They go years of training under a master to perform the kirtans correctly. Now, these people have whitewashed the terror stories from their narrative. It's no longer in the narrative. It is not something big. All organizations do it. So, as far as anybody is concerned, this past is best forgotten as far as this organization is concerned. As promised earlier, we are going to go now back to Lala Jagat Narayan's assassination. In this case, the Akhand Kirtani Jatha had lured a staff of the editor to commit the murder. The same method is now going to be used against Prime Minister Mrs. Indira Gandhi herself. The high testosterone, high voltage drama now shifts from Amritsar to New Delhi, more specifically to one Safdarjung Road, the residence of the then Prime Minister Mrs. Indira Gandhi. Mrs. Gandhi was a woke socialist Prime Minister. Such persons have total conviction in their decisions and do not value criticism. Those who live in a market quickly discover how to accept knowledgeable advice you listen to survive. In the case of Mrs. Gandhi, this rigidity cost her life. Contrary to popular belief, the conspiracy to assassinate the Prime Minister was hatched much before Operation Blue Star. These things take time, an indication of a sound hand behind the plot. It is the beginning of 1984. The first recruit was Keher Singh, a low-level employee of the Civil Aviation Ministry. More importantly, they used Keher Singh to recruit B.N. Singh, a bodyguard of the Prime Minister. Both of them come from the same Punjab village. This is an important community tie. They are able to trust and form bonds with each other. They are the core of the plot. Then they try to recruit Amar Singh. Amar declines. Then they go for Balbir Singh. Time to take a break. It's time to note R.K. Dhawan, Special Secretary, was in conversation with the conspirators in total innocence.
जीवित रहूं या नहीं रहूं, और जब तक मुझमें सांस है तब तक सेवा ही नहीं जाए, और जब मेरी जान जाएगी तो मैं कह सकती हूँ कि एक एक खून का खतरा जितना मेरा है, वो एक एक खून एक भारत को जीवित करेगा.
A crackpot plot is hatched to assassinate the Prime Minister on 5th August 1984. Classical assassination theory. The Prime Minister goes from a residence to Red Fort for the traditional Independence Day speech. She is vulnerable for these 5 miles. Things take a dramatic turn because the main convoy has a security duplicate Prime Minister. Mrs. Indira Gandhi herself goes through another unannounced route. This saves her. The reprieve to the Prime Minister is momentary. Balbir demands his 30 lakhs rupees, that would be in crores now. They were a part of the deal as promised. On refusal, he opts out. Balbir was later acquitted by Supreme Court of conspiracy. There are indications that Balbir B.N. Singh received monetary benefits. The monetary trail was not followed. The co-conspirators are on lookout for another recruit. They zero in on Satwan Singh, a low-level school failure. He is a low IQ person. He is a constable of the Delhi police. His skill with a submachine gun gets him the plum job of a prime ministerial bodyguard. The very same skill makes him a deadly assassin. He was in Punjab during Operation Blue Star. He comes back susceptible and is easily recruited by B.N. Singh. There is also this omen of a falcon sitting on a tree that is interpreted as a command from the 10th Guru. Incidentally, the falcon icon appears frequently in the Sun storyline too. These things are quite important for these people. The sworn testimony of Bimal Kaur Khalsa, wife of B.N. Singh, indicates that on 17th October 1984, B.N. Singh and Keher Singh were on the roof of their house conspiring together. Satwan Singh later on joined them for meals. This lent credence to the conspiracy charge. Indians' roofs are flat, ideal for doing these things. Keher Singh and B.N. Singh along with their family members go to Amritsar on October 20th, 1984 to seal the conspiracy. On 24th October 1984, B.N. Singh and Satwan Singh, both a part of the PM's bodyguard, took Sikh baptism Amrit at a Gurdwara in Delhi. Their preparation work was complete. These ripples were picked up by intelligence. Acting on an intelligence report, all Sikh bodyguards were transferred. The transfers were rescinded by the Prime Minister herself. Officers who ordered the transfer were admonished by the Prime Minister. The irony of history, a PM signs a selfie death warrant. She now has a week to live. The assassination plan is now set in motion for a second time. Maybe the transfers catalyze it. The Satwan Singh now worked in the late night shift and B.N. Singh worked in the early morning shift. On 30th October, Satwan fakes a stomach bug and swaps duty with another guard. Both Satwan Singh and B.N. Singh now are in the morning shift of 31st October 1984, one Safdarjung row. It is do or die. 9th AM, 31st October, the PM is late for a press conference. She is in a hurry. She leaves behind the personal security officer, Mr. Bhatt, a distant relation. And the Indian tradition step in. Head Constable Narayan Singh is carrying the ceremonial umbrella over the Prime Minister on a fine October morning. During the attack, he has to keep the umbrella up so as not to cause disrespect. He cannot draw his weapon. Unarmed R.K. Dhawan, personal secretary, is respectfully behind. As the PM approaches the TMC gate, she is briefly unguarded. BN opens the gate and draws his 5-shot Mossad pistol. A surprised Prime Minister waves as though asking him to step aside. BN fires 3 shots only into the stomach. Satwan Singh steps in to fire his submachine gun, Sterling submachine gun, emptying the magazines of all 30 bullets. During the operation, they shout Bole Sonihal, that is something like Allahu Akbar. They place, after the deed, they place their weapons on the floor. BN saying, we have done what we needed to do. Now you can do what you have to do. They are apprehended and taken to a guardhouse in custody. Beant realizes that he is the man who knows too much. He draws his kirpan, and in the scuffle that follows was shot by Tarsem Singh Jamwal and Rajendra Saran of the ITBT, Indo-Tibetan Border Police. These names indicate that they are Gurkhas. Beant Singh died from the gunshot injuries while Satwant was seriously injured. He was later taken to a hospital by a senior security officer. Satwant Singh recovered and was, along with Kehar Singh, executed by hanging on court orders. Of 32 bullets that were fired, 30 had hit. 23 had passed through PM's body while 7 were trapped inside. The PM was still alive. Rather than wait for an ambulance, a white ambassador was sent to the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, abbreviated to AIIMS. The car carrying the dead Prime Minister sped to the hospital. It had in it the dying Prime Minister and Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, her daughter-in-law. The doctors at AIIMS reacted swiftly, and a team of surgeons led by Dr. Tirath Das Dogra extracted the bullets. This is another Kashmiri name. At 2:20 p.m., the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi has come to her injuries. Other accounts put the time of death at 9:40 a.m. If true, then unnecessary trauma to Sonia ji was caused. Mrs. Sonia Gandhi was like a daughter to Indira. Both were close. The death rate to the hospital was traumatic for Sonia ji, a fact that would later affect Indian politics. Beant Singh had shot 2 bullets, keeping 2. Beant Singh had shot 3 bullets, keeping 2 as a threat to Satwant. They did not have the presumption to fire at the face of the Prime Minister. All the fire was below the chest. They could have fired at point blank range and chose not to. They remained servile even when shooting at the Prime Minister. Sending the Prime Minister to All India Medical Institute, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, has a bearing on subsequent happenings, as we shall now see. The carnage that followed the assassination sealed the lips of the organization that financed the Indira Gandhi assassination plot. Failure is an orphan, blunders seals lips.
Let's take time to reflect. Let's slow it down. The narrative from this point is led by the fake news outlets like BBC, New York Times, Washington Post. The Indian news networks in those days tended to follow their lead. They did not portray the ground reality, going for politically correct news. There is no need to follow them. We will just follow the evidence. Now, there were 9 commissions of inquiry, etc., going into these riots. The last one was the Nanawati Commission. This was appointed by the BJP and is considered the most reliable one. So, I shall be going with the evidence provided in the Nanawati Commission. Now, the Holy Concord by the in the whole of India was that the religious places were respected, and generally law and order was maintained inside the premises by the people themselves. There was no interference from the government. This concord was broken by the Punjab Gurdwaras. In return for the unwritten immunity from law enforcement, they gave back murderous gangs, private arsenals and dead Indian army soldiers. It was a costly error. The hostile reaction to the shooting of the Prime Minister began as soon as the Prime Minister arrived at the institute. Dr. Swaran Singh, then just a trainee surgeon, is abused by a clerk for the Prime Minister's assassination. Dr. Swaran Singh is puzzled. He doesn't get it. Fortunately, a colleague whispers to him, "Flee for your life." As he escapes, he is given a sound beating. He manages to find a three-wheeler taxi, reaches home, shaken but alive. It is barely 1 o'clock. AIIMS is always buzzing. There are thousands of patients, and in India every patient comes with friends and relatives. So the whole place is usually jam-packed with people. Sending the Prime Minister to AIIMS turns out to be an error. A rumor spread, there is an ominous hum. Soon, blood chants are rendering the air. This is AIIMS. The crowd begins getting uncontrollable. The police try violence on them. They beat them up with sticks. It's called a lathi charge. But then something snaps. The rage goes incandescent. A lynch mob forms spontaneously, and they go to the nearby AIIMS flyover and commence stopping vehicles looking for Sikhs. The first victim is an elderly Sikh scooterist. He is probably thrown off the flyer, and he is probably the first victim. The carnage begins in the afternoon itself and continues into the night. This is going to go on for 3 days. Now the timeline after the assassination is 11 a.m. All India Radio announces the news of the Prime Minister being shot by the Sikh bodyguards. They mention Sikh bodyguards. This is a bone of contention for them. Well, the bodyguards were Sikh bodyguards, so they were saying the truth. They don't announce her death. At 2 p.m., foreign news channels are broadcasting the PM's death, and it is now common knowledge. The government itself is suppressing it at this time. At 4 p.m., Rajiv Gandhi, the son of Sonia Gandhi, returns from West Bengal. He comes from the airport directly to AIIMS, where isolated violence is already happening. There are unsubstantiated allegations against Rajiv for ordering the riots at AIIMS itself. Between 4:30 and 5:20, the President of India, then Mr. Zail Singh, rushed back from North Yemen foreign trip, and as he comes from the airport to the AIIMS, he sees at Kamal Cinema a mob. The moment he comes in, he is already seeing the things happening, and the President's car goes through, but a car in the rear is stopped and badly damaged. At AIIMS, the President is greeted by a mob. President Zail Singh is a Sikh, and they are throwing stones at the car. The President has to flee. The awful signs of bloodshed ahead is now plain to the authorities, to the highest authority. The violence on 31st October, initially restricted around AIIMS, is going to spread in the night itself. But initial violence, there are already many unrecorded Sikh deaths. On reaching the President's palace, Rashtrapati Bhavan, the President Zail Singh immediately rings up Lieutenant Governor P.V. Gawal, the concerned authority, and demanded action. He repeated this many times in the subsequent days. In fact, on 1st October, that is the very next day, he advised calling in the army. 6:45 p.m. Rajiv Gandhi is sworn in as the 6th Prime Minister of India without needing an intermediate government. As is normally the case, Sonia ji, his wife, opposes this but then demurs. Finally, at 8 o'clock in the night, newsreader Salma Sultan announces the death of the Prime Minister to the nation. This is the official announcement. She does it on Doordarshan TV. Rajiv Gandhi, the new Prime Minister, addresses the nation afterwards. Salma Sultan was a teenage heartthrob. She was a model of all TV newsreaders for a long time. Nowadays, the model has changed drastically. The nation goes into numb shock. I remember that the Grand Trunk Road in front of me, that was crowded with heavy trucks lumbering, suddenly went silent. And this was on the 31st itself. And a sense of dread hanged over the air. Everybody went indoors. The whole area went silent. After the TV announcement, next day the whole of the country sat glued to TV sets. We had the only TV set in the entire neighborhood and hundreds collected to have a look. In the evening, we put the TV set outside and people were sitting and looking at Indira's body draped in the flag. We were mesmerized by the scene. Those were the socialist days where even having a television was a privilege. The country went into grief with people mourning, and this was unprompted and not mandated by authority. The sense of trepidation filled the air. This was once in a lifetime occurrence for all of us. The violence propagated from AIMS like a shockwave, spreading all over the country in a few days. In Delhi itself, the old Pakistani refugee East Delhi areas were the worst hit. This was mainly Trilokpuri, Shahadra, Mangalpuri, Sultanpur, Nandnagri. A road that was just 150 meters in Gita Colony, Trilokpuri, 400 people died. Practically all male Sikhs were dead in that area. The mobs were brutal and most inhuman acts were carried out. The Prime Minister is silent. The expedient explanation is that he was in grief and busy with funeral arrangements. He did not try to stop the massacres. The senior Supreme Court advocate Ram Jethmalani, the socialist Sharad Jadhav, personally met the then Home Minister. He was P.V. Narasimha Rao, a well-known procrastinator, and begged action. The allegation here is that Arun Nehru, half-brother of Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, was the real power that controlled the Home Ministry. I am harping on the Home Ministry because the Home Ministry directly controls the Delhi police. The socialists Karpuri Thakur, Sharad Jadhav, Air Chief Marshal Arjan Singh, General Jagjit Singh Arora, Shri Patwant Singh, and then BJP politician Vijay Kumar Malhotra met the President in different groups. This is a sort of a thing that happens in India. The President himself in turn complained to the Prime Minister, the Home Minister and other cabinet ministers about the situation in Delhi when he met them at Trimurti House where Indira Gandhi was lying in state. Rao did nothing, the Prime Minister did nothing. The police were paralyzed by the crime overload. normal police methods were ineffective. The only remaining remedy was shooting on sight. These orders never came. A curfew of sorts on paper was announced, but this was never enforced. The then police later claimed that they had fired their guns on hundreds of occasions. The Sikhs with licensed guns fired on mobs and killed about 50 of them. In these circumstances, the Sikhs were arrested and charged with murder, but all were acquitted later on. These decisions are political in nature and has to be taken at the highest level. In case of Delhi, that was the Home Minister, P.V. Narasimha Rao, or the new Prime Minister, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi. The constitutional machinery collapsed. Sikhs were being murdered now in their homes. The violence spread all over the country. I know that lynch mobs were formed in isolated villages, and these mobs went onto the roads looking for somebody to kill. It was that bad. Vehicles bearing Sikh names written on the side were torched. Sikh drivers were burned alive. Sikh drivers trimmed their hair to hide their identity. These midnight haircuts were priced at 30 times the going rates. Many saved themselves that way. There are stories of a brother who cut his hair, see his other brother being burned alive who hadn't cut his hair. India at that time was a chamber of horrors. The Sikh drivers abandoned their vehicles and took refuge in roadside hotels, we call them dhabas, pretending to be Hindus. The national highways were full of smouldering vehicles weeks later. Point to note is that insurance policies did not cover rioting, so many Sikhs went bankrupt in this time. People were living a modest middle class life suddenly became poverty stricken. By the third day, Sikh businesses were being looted and burned all over the country. These are small businesses. Incidents reported by affidavits submitted to Nanawati Commission come from Himachal Pradesh, Haryana, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, West Bengal, Maharashtra, Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, Assam, Gujarat, Karnataka, Goa and Tamil Nadu. These are actual affidavits submitted to Nanawati Commission. So anybody who claims that all this was pre-planned is way beyond fantastic. This is not true. But we will come to the planning part of it later on. But the fact is, the nation had enough of these falcons, these guns, these gunners, imaginary grievances and mass money flowing to support this anti-constitutional infrastructure. And they were sick and tired of political parties taking advantage of this. It was no longer acceptable. Suddenly it was a big problem. Literally hours. This system, no system can handle this. And this is an extreme circumstances. The system collapsed, it crashed, shutting down entire institutions. Even the high courts shut down. It was that bad. This is the timeline according to what we saw. October 1st, we hear of rumors of Diwali celebrations and joyful sweets being distributed on the streets on 31st July itself. These were some stupid Sikhs who were doing this. This was claimed by the fake media to be false. Typical what is happening nowadays. But those areas where these things were claimed to have happened were the worst hit the next day. So we believed these rumors. And now there is documentary evidence. 338 affidavits were filed in the Nanawati Commission regarding distribution of sweets by Sikhs. Sweet distribution celebration of Indira's murder was a hot potato, never to be discussed and never to be touched. Of the 9 commissions that inquired into the Sikh riots, Nanawati, I've already told you, is the most credible. That's why I'm quoting Nanawati. Nanawati Commission was appointed 19 years after the incident, and it was appointed by the then opposition party, Bharatiya Janata Party, by Prime Minister Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee. As an example, Daryaganj Marina store was burned down on 1/11/84 at about 3:30 p.m. With respect to this incident, 15% filed affidavits before Justice Mishra Commission. This is one of the commissions appointed by the Congress party. What they have stated is that on hearing the news of the assassination of Srimati Indira Gandhi, 2 Sikhs of Daryaganj connected with Marina store distributed sweets and provoked the persons of the area, and thereafter the store was attacked. This scene was repeated in Bokaro. 669 affidavits were filed in the Nanawati Commission, which described how Sikhs were attacked in an organized manner. 675 affidavits with respect to incidents that in Kanpur, and 122 affidavits with respect to incidents in Bokaro and Chas. These are twin cities. Today they are in Jharkhand. The Ministry of Home Affairs figure for Sikh dead is 2,146 and 556 for the rest of India. The Sikh claim is up to 17,000. To be fair, we know of many recorded deaths. A figure of 4,500 Sikh deaths in the whole of India is a credible figure. October 2nd, the Sikhs are staring at the abyss. The day begins with looting, arson and rape. The mobs promise to return the next day. Now here is the thing. Many Sikhs' lives were saved because the mobs were initially concentrating on looting and burning shops and places like that. They promised that the next day they will come and actually start murdering. So a lot of lives were saved that way. Whatever you can think of it. October 3rd, the cremation of Indira is over. Overnight, this government reboots. The army appears magically and immediately law and order is restored in most areas. The next day never comes, thankfully. So that's the reason why it is in thousands. If this continued for a month, then the figure would be in millions. 7/11/84, riots fully stopped.